Welcome back to another episode of the Life's Playbook podcast. This is episode 5 of my show. It is week 18 of the NFL. I know it's hard to believe that the NFL season for some teams is coming to an end and the playoffs are right around the corner. With that being said, I come on here and share the updated NFL playoff bracket, as well as who are some of the one and done teams and their futures going forward. More specifically, the Browns' future moving forward and the Bengals' future moving forward, as well as recap those two games that went on Saturday, which were the Steelers taking on the Bengals and the Browns taking on the Ravens. So, with that being said, let's get into it. And as always, the game never ends here at Life's Playbook Podcast. Let's get into it. Starting with an updated playoff picture in the NFL. So, not much has changed 1 through 5, except the 5th seed. Not much has changed 1 through 4. 1 through 4. The Chiefs still hold that 1 seed. The Bills hold the 2 seed with the win over New England. The Ravens are now the 3rd seed with a win over Cleveland yesterday. And the Texans hold the 4th seed, assuming they beat Tennessee, which they will because the AFC South is not a very strong division. The Texans, again, are fortunate to be playing in the division that they are, considering the massive slump that C.J. Stroud is having and that Texans team overall is having. So the Texans hold the 4th seed. The Steelers lost yesterday to the Bengals in an interesting game. They were projected to be the 5th seed originally. That seed now goes to the Chargers with a win over Las Vegas, which they should also beat Las Vegas today. Las Vegas is a terrible team, and just like the Cleveland Browns, they are just playing for the draft. So the Chargers are now set in stone at the 5th seed, and the Steelers are set in stone at the 6th. The one team in the hunt still are the Broncos. The Broncos and the Buccaneers are the only 2 teams in the NFL that have a win-in clinch scenario. If they win in, they are in. Broncos currently are facing Kansas City. Kansas City, they are not playing any of their first strings, so the Broncos have an increased chance of winning that game, although I still think Carson Wentz is going to pull through. Now, this game is very significant if you're a Bengals fan. You know this game, the Broncos and Kansas City, is very significant. They are now currently sitting at the 8th seed right now, still on the bubble, behind the Broncos. The Dolphins also still have a chance to make the playoffs. They need some things to happen as well as the Bengals need some things to happen. But let's talk about the Bengals more specifically. With that win over the Steelers this Saturday night, with the win over the Steelers, they are now set at the 8th seed over the Dolphins. They are 9-8. Their current playoff probability is 12%. However, if the Broncos lose today against the Kansas City Chiefs, with none of their starters playing, none of the Chiefs starters playing, if they lose today, and if the Jets beat the Dolphins, the Bengals will be in the playoffs. Assuming that the Jets beat the Dolphins, which, me personally, I don't see that happening, because the Dolphins are also fighting for that last spot, so they have an incentive to win that game. And plus, the Jets have been a terrible organization overall. I don't see them pulling out one more win to finish off their season. The Jets are one of those teams that are also one and done, their season is over. So, with that being said, it's going to be a tough road for the Bengals to try to make the playoffs. I don't think the Broncos are going to beat the Chiefs to secure that last spot in the playoffs. I still think despite Patrick Mahomes and the gang still sitting out, the Chiefs can still get the job done against the Broncos today. So, with that being said, I don't think the Bengals will make the playoffs, but you never know. It is Kansas City. They can win with just about anybody. It is the Broncos, and they've had a phenomenal season, and they could pull it out against the Chiefs' second strings. That game it's not very significant to anybody outside of the Bengals fan base and organization, but this game, Bengals fans, and you know it is very significant for you guys that the Broncos lose today against Kansas City in order to increase your playoff chances. And it is also very significant that the Dolphins lose to increase your playoff chances and get that last 7th seed. With that being said, that is the AFC updated playoff picture. Moving down to the NFC, not much has changed in the NFC. The Lions right now are still the 1 seed. They are still projected to be the 1 seed. Now, the Lions play the Vikings today to end off the Sunday slate of NFL games. The Lions play the Vikings today. I will be watching that game. This is most likely going to be one of the biggest games of this NFL season. It is definitely one of the most hyped up and anticipated games, and it holds a lot of significance for what it is for both teams, because if the Vikings win against the Lions, they will be the new 1 seed in the NFC. Again, right now the Lions are projected to be the 1 seed in the NFC playoff race. They are still projected to be the 1 seed. If the Lions win tonight against the Vikings, they will officially lock down that 1 seed. However, if either team loses to the other, the losing team will be the 5th seed. They will fall to the 5th seed. And again, the winner will be the 1 seed in the NFC playoff race. Now, me personally, I'm rocking with the Lions to clinch the 1 seed in the NFC. Not taking anything away from Sam Darnold, because, as surprising as a season he's having and how well Kevin O'Connell has that team coached, I still think Dan Campbell and the Lions are as tough as nails, and they can get the job done, and they know what's at stake. So I think the Lions can get the job done tonight. Moving forward with the rankings, the Eagles, they are the 2 seed with the win over the Giants today. They are the 2 seed, and the win over the Cowboys last week, they clinched the NFC East title, finishing first in their conference, 13-3. I have no problem that they won't handle the Giants. I'll go into a little more specifically about the Giants and the Eagles game on Tuesday, and I'll talk about something new that I'm implicating for the podcast starting Tuesday. I will let you know at the end of this episode a little more on what that is and how that's going to work. Then what are my plans with this new idea that I will be starting. But anyways, the Rams are the 3 seed. Predicted the Rams to be the 3 seed. They locked down the 3 seed with the win over Seattle. They will finish first in the NFC West. Seattle, unfortunately, your season is over. It ended with that Cardinals game after the Rams beat the Cardinals 2 Saturdays ago. So your season is pretty much over at this point, but good season nonetheless. Rams are the 3 seed. 4 seed is still to be determined. Again, Tampa Bay, they are a win and in team. All they have to do is beat the Saints today, which I have no problems they will do, and they will win the NFC South and lock down that 4th seed. So I have no problems that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won't beat the Saints today and lock down that 4th seed. So I'm projecting the Buccaneers as of right now to win the NFC South and to lock down that 4th seed. 5th seed right now is the Vikings. Again, if they beat Detroit, they become the 1 seed, and Detroit moves down to the 5th seed. I still have I'm rocking with the Lions on this one to get the job done. The Commanders, surprisingly enough, they are 2nd in the NFC East, currently at 11-5 right now. They play Dallas today. Not much for the Commanders left. They've already clinched a playoff berth. I would not be surprised if they end up losing to the Cowboys, considering that they most likely will be resting Jaden Daniels and the starting offense in that game. So not much to lose for the Commanders, and as in terms of seeding, well-deserved rest for the Commanders' starting offense if they are being rested in today's game. Commanders right now lock up the 6th seed, and the Packers finish off that race at the 7th seed. They are 11-5. They are third right now in the NFC North. And the NFC North was a very competitive division this year. It was very exciting to watch the teams play. There was speculation that maybe all four of the teams in the NFC North could make it. Again, the Bears, however, ruined that. They they failed expectations and they ruined that narrative that all four of the teams could make the playoffs. Anyone who was a longtime NFL watcher and a longtime Bears fan, they know just how bad this season has gone for the Chicago Bears. But the Packers play the Bears today. I have no doubts that the Packers don't get the job done today against the Bears. Right now, projected in the hunt again is Tampa Bay. They are projected to be the fourth seed right now. I think they'll lock it down. They'll beat the Saints and lock it down and finish the season 10-7. And the Falcons are currently on the bubble. Not exactly sure how the Falcons at this point can make the playoffs. I mean, assuming the Saints pulled an upset on the Bucks go 9-8, and the Saints win against Carolina, which I'll have no doubt that the Falcons don't get the job done against Carolina today. Carolina is terrible, and they are also playing for the draft. So no doubt that the Falcons don't get the job done today against the Panthers. But I'm assuming the only way for the Falcons to clinch that fourth seed is if the Bucks lose to the Saints, which I doubt, and if the Falcons beat the Panthers, which I have no doubt that they'll do. And again, if both teams fall to 9-8, the Falcons have that tiebreaker over the Bucks since they swept the Bucks this year twice, and the Falcons would clinch that fourth seed. But other than that playoff path, the Falcons really have no shot at the NFC South if the Bucks win today, which I have no doubt that they do beat the Saints today. So as of right now in the NFC, Lions are still projected to be the first seed. I think the Lions will lock down the first seed with the win over the Vikings tonight. The Eagles lock down the second seed. Rams lock down the third seed. I have the Bucks locking down the fourth seed. The Vikings will most likely stay where they're at the fifth seed with the loss to the Lions tonight. The Commanders will get the job done. They keep that sixth seed against the Cowboys. And the Packers will get the job done as well, and they will keep that seventh seed against the Bears. So that is the NFC playoff picture race. And again, all the updated eliminated teams as of right now are the Seahawks, Cowboys, Cardinals, Niners, Saints, Bears, Panthers, and Giants. Those are all the eliminated one-and-done season-over teams in the NFC. And in the AFC, your one-and-done season-is-over teams are the Colts, Jets, Raiders, Jags, Titans, and the Cleveland Browns. With that being said, let's get into the games that went on last Saturday between the Ravens and the Browns and the Steelers and the Bengals. Browns played the Ravens yesterday at 4:30. Being a Browns fan, I obviously watched this game. Did not have high expectations for the Browns going into that game. If anything, I think all Browns fans can admit that we are glad that the season is over. However, the future is very, very murky and rocky for Browns fans and for the Browns as a whole. There will be a lot of discussions as to what the Browns do in the draft, who we decide to extend, who we decide to trade for, who we decide to keep and bring back. I think the only thing on my wish list as far as a Browns fan is make sure Myles Garrett stays for another year, make sure we can afford to extend him. And as far as draft goes, do we draft another quarterback? Who knows? Do we rock with Watson for the remainder of his contract? Who knows? But as a Browns fan, I think we can all agree that the season has not gone the way we expected, especially considering that 2 years ago in 2023, the Browns made the playoffs. So the season has been a huge regress since then. The Browns lose that game, obviously. The Ravens clinched the 3 seed, the AFC North title as well, with that win over the Browns. The Ravens, they played their starters, which I think may not have been the smartest of decisions. I think the Ravens could have beaten the Browns, honestly, with their second string. I think that's also supported by the fact that the Ravens' star receiver, Zay Flowers, went down with a knee injury. Hopes and prayers for him He is a vital piece and really the only vital receiver on that receiving core for the Ravens. Speedy recovery for him. Hope he can make the playoffs if possible. If the injury is that bad, he most likely will miss the playoffs, and that will hurt the Ravens' offense. So I don't think it was the smartest of moves by the Ravens to play the starters, but again, I understand that they're playing for that third seed. They want to ensure that they get that third seed, and they want to ensure that notch over the Steelers. Speaking of the Steelers, they also played the Bengals yesterday at 8. It was a doubleheader Saturday. Ravens, Browns, Steelers, Bengals. The Bengals get the job done. As far as my thoughts on that game, I thought that the Steelers played very, very to not lose. They didn't play to win because going into that game, the Steelers still had a shot. Well, granted that if the Ravens had lost to the Browns, the Steelers still would have had a shot to clinch that 3 seed if they win against the Bengals. They did not. It was a very significant game really for both teams. Granted, if the Ravens had lost, it would have been significant for the Steelers because they could have came in and stole that number 1 title in the AFC North, but that did not happen. Joe Burrow and the crew got the job done, and they kept the Bengals season alive, and they finished the season overall 9-8, and they are now praying that the Broncos lose and that the Dolphins lose. Again, I don't think the Broncos could. I don't think the Broncos could beat the Chiefs, despite who's playing for the Chiefs and who's not. So I think part 1 of the Bengals getting into the playoffs is already done. They beat the Steelers, and I don't think the Broncos can get the job done against the Chiefs, despite the Chiefs not playing Patrick Mahomes and the crew. Now the second part, as far as the Jets beating the Dolphins, I don't see that happening. I think the Dolphins, they have too much of an incentive. They have too much of a drive to make the playoffs. I think they're going to come into that game and smash the Jets in the mouth and try to fight for that last spot with the Bengals. As far as the Bengals played last Saturday, they played well. They played good enough to win. It was a cold game. They end up winning that game, I think, pretty handedly. They beat the Steelers. The Steelers, again, they are now the 6th seed in the AFC playoff race. If the Bengals don't make the playoffs, assuming that the Broncos somehow pull one out and beat the Chiefs, and the Broncos get the job done, the Broncos, they would finish the 7th seed. It would finish 10-7. And looking ahead at the Bengals' future, I think there's a lot of questions to be asked, a lot of questions to be raised, to be had. Where do you go defensively? Do you revamp the defense? Because anybody who's watched the NFL and who's watched any Bengals games this season, they know that this has been a historically bad defense in the Bengals' time as an NFL team. This has not been a good defense for the Bengals. So I think as far as looking into the draft, this is all assuming if they don't make the playoffs. So this is assuming that the Broncos do beat the Chiefs and lock down that 7th seed. This is all assuming that the Bengals don't make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, where do you go? What do you do as far as draft-wise? Again, I'm not a Bengals fan, but I have watched enough Bengals games to know that there are problems that need to be fixed. More specifically on the defense rather than the offense, I think the only problem offensively that's going to need to be asked, that's going to need to be raised to the attention of the Bengals organization is, fixing that offensive line, because that offensive line has not been, they have not looked good these last couple of games. And where does T. Higgins go? And how do you as an organization replace T. Higgins? Because he was a vital part of the Bengals offense, and he could walk away come the offseason. Again, this is all assuming that the Bengals don't make the playoffs. Where do you go? Where does T. Higgins go? Where do you draft, and where do you put most of your center of attention to as far as the Bengals team goes? If I were running the Bengals right now, I would put a majority of my attention into that defense. Again, the Bengals have one Pro Bowl defensive starter in Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson had a phenomenal season. He's a phenomenal all-star talent for sure. I think he gets overlooked though, however, again, because the Bengals didn't have quite the season they were hoping. They finished the season strong, don't get me wrong. They're still in the running for the playoffs, and if you're a Bengals fan, you're hoping you make the playoffs and you're hoping the Broncos and the Dolphins lose. They finished the season strong, but it wasn't quite the season that the fans were expecting. It wasn't quite the season that the players were expecting either. But if I was running the Bengals organization right now, I would make sure to keep Trey Hendrickson happy and try to revamp that entire Bengals defense. That's what I would do if I was running the Bengals organization. Again, as far as the Browns go, where do we go as far as quarterback play? Can we afford to keep Myles Garrett for another couple years? Give him an extension? Obviously, that's my biggest wish list. That's my biggest present for my wish list is making sure Myles Garrett stays for as long as possible, and we can afford to get the right pieces to help that Browns defense and that Browns offense. Do we stick with Deshaun Watson and finish out the rest of his contract? Do the Browns move on from him somehow? Hopefully a better talent in the draft than Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward, someone of that nature. I don't know. I don't know as far as the Browns' future goes. Again, my number one thing on my wish list would most likely be making sure Myles Garrett stays and that we can afford to get back a healthy defense because the Browns suffered a lot of injuries yesterday and a lot of injuries throughout the season defensively, and make sure that we have a healthy and strong offensive line because that our offensive line also suffered a lot of injuries and a lot of crucial pieces missing as far as making sure Nick Chubb stays healthy as well and revamping that receiving core so that we have more help for whoever may be at the quarterback helm. Because, again, as far as the Browns' future goes, it is very, very murky. It's very, very up in the air with that Deshaun Watson contract and everything. So nothing is guaranteed for the Browns. Whereas the Bengals, they kind of you kind of know if you've been watching. You don't even have to be a Bengals fan. As long as if you've been watching Bengals games throughout the season, you know what the problems are, and you know where the center of attention needs to be for the Bengals. Again, this is all for the Bengals. This is all assuming they don't, the pieces don't fall for the Bengals and they don't make the playoffs. This is all looking ahead into the future, Bengals fans, on what might need to be done to make sure that 9-8 doesn't happen again and that you can rise back to the level of expectations that you had previously. And if Joe Burrow can bring your team back to another 21 type of run, and he could do it this year. I have more than enough trust and faith in Joe Burrow that if the Bengals make the playoffs this year, they can make another 2021 Super Bowl run. But again, the chips need to fall for the Bengals in order for them to make the playoffs. Where do you go with them? If they don't make the playoffs, where do you go with them moving forward? And where do you go with the Browns moving forward? Again, the Ravens are the third seed with the win over the Browns, and the Steelers fall to the sixth seed, and the seventh seed is still up for grabs as of right now. With that being said, that is the updated playoff picture for both the NFC and the AFC. That is my little thoughts and opinions on the Browns and Ravens game and the Steelers and Bengals game. Again, the chips need to fall for the Bengals to make the playoffs. As far as my Browns go, where do we go from here? Who's going to be the starting quarterback going into next season? And can we afford to keep the right pieces? Can we afford to keep everybody healthy, bring everybody back, offensively and defensively? Now, I talked a little bit earlier about something new that I was going to be doing with the podcast, something new that I'm going to be implementing starting Tuesday. I've thought about it, and I have decided to add another day dropping episodes, if you will. I will be dropping episodes Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Tuesday's episodes will be called Tuesday Talks. Now, what exactly a Tuesday Talk will be, I will dive into a little more about what exactly a Tuesday Talk is going to look like, and what this it's going to be used for to set up the podcast in the future. I'll dive into a little more about what it is on Tuesday, but I will say this: it's not exactly going to be the same old predictions and recap and previews to games like these all these episodes up till now have been. It's going to be a little bit deeper. It's going to be a little more narrative based. It's going to be a little more, a little more newsy, like what's going on around the NBA and what's going on around the NFL and the college football, and maybe and a certain player, maybe some drama comes up with a certain player. It's going to be more news related, more deeper, more narrative. Again, I'll go into once Tuesday comes around. I'll fully break down what a Tuesday talk is going to look like. I'll fully break down what the discussion for that day, and I'll fully break down how it's going to be implemented for the future of the podcast. And if it does well enough, that's going to pave the way for a lot of more other exciting and big things that I have in store for my show. With that being said, this has been episode 5 of the Life'sPlaybook podcast, and the Spotify link should be in the bio of that TikTok page. You don't want to miss out on all the little snippets and clips that I post onto that page as a way to help reach out and expand the audience for the podcast, and a way to get my podcast onto more platforms. That's mainly what the TikTok page will be used for. It's an extension of the show. It's an extension of the podcast. Again, I'll post snippets and clips from episodes and Tuesday talks onto that page, as well as keep promoting the podcast and encouraging you guys to watch my other videos and check out the YouTube page and the Spotify page. So make sure you check out the TikTok page. I'll go a little more in depth on what a Tuesday talk is and how it will be used moving forward to pave the way for some bigger ideas and bigger things for the show that will be coming throughout the year. And with that being said, this has been episode 5 of the Life's Playbook podcast. I will catch you guys Tuesday for the first ever Tuesday talk video / episode. I'll catch you guys the following Thursday for episode 6. With that being said, the game never ends here at the Life's Playbook podcast. If you like the content and you like the videos and you don't want to miss out, make sure to like and subscribe under this video. It is greatly appreciated. Till then, game never ends here with the Life's Playbook podcast. I will catch you guys Tuesday. Peace out.